continue this morning looking at Israel Apartheid Week 2021. And this morning, we are going to be talking with the Palestine Solidarity Campaign. We're joined on the line this morning by William Shoki. William, good morning to you. Welcome to the show.
Good morning to you, and thank you very much for having me.
Yes, obviously, this is a very important week, and year after year, when we speak about Israel Apartheid Week, once again, we raise the issue of apartheid Israel. We raise the issue about, the occupation of Palestine, but at the same time, also looking at what impacts on us globally. And this year, with the theme being anti-racism, being about talking about discrimination and the like. And I think with the sign of the times that we are living in, William, at this point in time, a very, very relevant theme.
Absolutely. I think indeed a very relevant theme, and I just want to underscore that it's coinciding with a very relevant time as well. I think everyone has been paying attention to the news that emerged earlier this week regarding the Chief Justice of the country's refusal to apologize for comments that he made during a webinar organized by the Jerusalem Post, where he effectively declared his allegiance to Israel. And I think that given that this year's theme is United Against Racism, the intention of Israeli Apartheid Week is to raise awareness first and foremost, and to show to people how the cause of Palestinian liberation is a universal struggle. So it's not just a struggle that finds its fault lines across religious difference. It's a struggle for human rights. And it's a struggle for human rights that no matter in which part of the world you are in, you can relate to, because those struggles are still waged in places like South Africa, in places like the United States, and they're also still continuously being waged in Palestine. So I think that this week is the perfect opportunity to disseminate information, to conduct public education, and to demonstrate to people why the Palestinian liberation struggle is an important one.
Yes. Now, also, William, often the Palestinian struggle is seen by many as a religious issue, but it's a human rights issue. And just coming back to the Chief Justice, and who obviously made a religious connotation to his support for Israel, but forgetting that this is a human rights issue. This is not only about Arab Palestinians. It is not about Muslim Palestinians. It is about Christian Palestinians as well.
Absolutely. I think that's correct. What I think is something that's illustrative of this point is I think a lot of the Chief Justice's defenders tried to point to examples of other justices of the Constitutional Court talking to this issue. There was a time a few years ago where former Justice Edward Cameron spoke at a public lecture, and he made some remarks about the struggle. But I think the important thing that distinguishes the two instances of comments made by justices of the Constitutional Court is that Edwin Cameron's reflections were about how the Palestinian struggle is precisely a struggle for human rights. And talking as a lawyer, talking as a judge, his point was that human rights are being violated, international law is being violated, and that's the reason why the struggle is important. Whereas in the instance where the Chief Justice spoke, the vantage point from which he did so was to frame it as being a religious confrontation, which it is not. And I think that to try and portray the struggle as one that is centered on religious difference acts as a way to conceal the human rights abuses that are taking place and the human rights violations that are taking place, because it creates the impression that both sides are at an equal footing. But both sides are not at an equal footing. The power imbalance is tipped strongly in the favor of Israel. They're the ones who exercise tremendous control over the lives of Palestinians, and in exercising the control over their lives, politically subjugate them, deny them civil and political freedoms, and economically oppress them. And I think that this week is devoted entirely to show that, and to show that, as was in the case in South Africa, it wasn't a struggle for the racial aspirations of distinct racial groupings. Rather, it was a human rights struggle in which Black South Africans said, we declare and demand these universal human rights that should be available to all human beings, regardless of their race, regardless of their religious affiliation, regardless of their gender. And Palestinians are in the exact same position at the moment, making the exact demand.
Exactly. And I think the other point that one needs to note is we know that the theme for Israel Apartheid Week 2021, one of the major contributing factors has been what has happened with regard to, Black Lives Matter. And, a lot of it was actually drawn from there in terms of coming up with a theme. But looking at us here in South Africa, and when one looks at or drills down or breaks down this whole united against racism theme, South Africa, we have experienced colonialism, we have experienced racism, we've experienced apartheid, we've experienced discrimination in more ways than one. And in terms of celebrating Israel Apartheid Week 2021, placing us as South Africans, because we've been through it, and in terms of, I think, the most recent country that has now obviously been rid of this evil, ugly head of apartheid compared to all the countries around the world.
Absolutely. And I think an important opportunity for reflection that is provided to South Africans when understanding not only the Palestinian liberation struggle, but doing so through the lens of our own anti-apartheid struggle, is to appreciate how the effects of colonialism, how the effects of apartheid are still with us today, in the sense that the inequalities that were inaugurated by those systems of racial hierarchy still manifest today as racialized economic inequality. And I think an important thing to note here is that even in the instance where we are successful in achieving civil and political rights for Palestinians, there is still a long way to go insofar as achieving economic emancipation. And this is truly, I think, the case for most countries around the world, that the economic system that we are living in today is one that privileges an elite few and that oppresses a vast majority, that the distribution of income, the distribution of resources is one that in a country such as ours is still fundamentally inaccessible to the poor and working class. And I think it's by zoning in on the Palestinian liberation struggle that I think provides us the opportunity to see that, to see, once again, as I said earlier, how this is a universal cause for liberation. And it's not only connected to the Palestinian liberation struggle, it's connected to the struggle against racial oppression, it's connected to the struggle against economic inequality. And I think the issue of economic inequality is especially something that is obviated by the pandemic that we are currently experiencing in its uneven effects on the population and in the inequality between the global north and the global south when it pertains to things such as access to vaccines and their distribution. So I think really what we want to emphasize this week, and what a lot of the programs that have been organized for this week, is to show the interconnectedness of all of these struggles, so to underscore and emphasize that it's ultimately a human rights struggle and a struggle for universal emancipation across all fronts.
Yeah, definitely. And I think what you're saying is very, very true, William, is what this pandemic in the last year has done is it's exposed an unjust system and just an unjust economic system, and also in more ways than one, it's basically impacted, on economics, on socio-economics, on the dynamics that they are playing out around the world, and this great divide, this huge divide that exists in this world at this point in time.
Absolutely. I think that's totally correct. And ultimately, the struggle for Palestinian liberation is the struggle against the division of humanity, whether it's the division of humanity according to race-based categories, whether it's the division of humanity according to class, whether it's the division of humanity according to gender. Because what it shows us is that all of us as human beings have the same needs, have the same aspirations for belonging and community, and have the same aspiration for self-expression and individuality. And this should be available to everyone. And a pandemic such as this one has, I think, for everyone, just highlighted the fragility of human life. It's made it clear to us that ultimately as human beings, if we want to live together in community, we do so on conditions of dependence. We each depend on each other in order to realize our own interests and to realize our own aims. And what all struggles for liberation emphasize is that liberation is both an issue for the individual to have their self-expression and autonomy, but it's also liberation through collective achievement, through collective emphasis on how in society we ultimately live together. And in order to do that, we have to figure out ways to do so side by side without conflict and with respect of each other's dignity.
Well, William, thank you very much for that and for your time with us this morning on Salam Media on News and Views. We wish you well. We wish the PSC well. And during this week of Israel Apartheid Week 2021, we thank you for your contribution.
Thank you very much. And if I could just ask everyone to check their social media, follow the South African BDS Coalition on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and you can see updates on all of the events that are being organized across different organizations for this weekend. I hope to see you all at some of them. Thank you very much.
All the best. Thank you very much for that. Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Osman's Taj Mahal Spice and Rice. For over 80 years, Osman's Taj Mahal have been perfecting the art of the perfect blend of spices, pure, aromatic, and well-seasoned. Spices to tantalize your taste buds. From creative cuisines to gastronomical gourmet goodies. From exotic odors to traditional dishes, Osman's Taj Mahal have remained synonymous with quality spices and condiments. Taj Mahal rice, beans, and lentils. Try our range of chili bite mixes, rose and ilachi syrup, our quick and easy biryani pack, and our traditional range of spice blends. Osman's Taj Mahal. There is no substitute for quality.
It is the end of season sale at Minty's Fabrics this week, with specials at incredibly low prices once again. Discover Minty's summer fabrics from 25 Rand per meter, ready-to-wear evening dresses starting from 1,500 Rand, and haute couture beaded fabrics from 399 per meter, making Minty's the only place to be this week. Follow our social pages for more information. Minty's, 542 Ridge Road, Durban. COVID protocols to be adhered to by all Minty's clients with necessary measures in place.
A strip of land with over 2 million people blockaded for 13 years. Healthcare is on its knees, food is scarce, and water is inadequate. COVID has wreaked havoc in the lives of the people of Gaza. 53% of the population live below the poverty line. 80% of Gaza relies on external aid to survive. And 20,000 children are now orphans. The future is bleak. Please, don't forget Gaza. Donate now to Islamic Relief.
Motala Perfumes, one of the biggest perfume manufacturing houses in Africa, with a state-of-the-art manufacturing facility specializing in designing, creating, developing and producing new scents and matching designer fragrances for all our stores, as well as private labeling for individuals and companies across Africa. Visit your nearest Motala Perfumes store or visit our website at www.motalaperfumes.com for more information on creating your own brand.
Are you looking to be inspired, uplifted and empowered? The Mid-Morning Talk Show with Nafisa Dango is here to showcase positive inspiration that will entice you to change your perspective and uplift your well-being.
The first step to recovery in any kind of situation.
We're trying to create critical thinkers, critical leaders.
What gives me passion? What brings purpose?
Change your mindset. Reach out and uplift those in need.
Is there happiness in what you're doing? So are you just...
So we need to view slavery in the context of today's terms, and sometimes we don't venture beyond our own spaces. We only stick to what we are used to.
Tune into the Mid-Morning Talk Show on Thursdays between 11 and 1 p.m. to be enticed into different spaces where we uncover the true meaning of love and positivity.
لا إله إلا الله والله أكبر سبحان الله والحمد لله لا إله إلا الله والله أكبر الله ربي لا أريد سواه يرتاح قلبي كلما نادى اشرح صدري بالذكر يا الله يسر أمري في كل ما ألقاه نور دربي واحفظني يا رباه أنت أنيسي دوما يا الله سبحان الله والحمد لله لا إله إلا الله والله أكبر سبحان الله والحمد لله لا إله إلا الله والله أكبر في ذكر ربي يطمئن قلبي وتذوب أحزاني ويغفر ذنبي اشرح صدري بالذكر يا
The time is just gone 8:52 a.m. as we head towards news at 9 this morning, and we